Today we're talking about visual effects. Let's get into it.
This is the Effects Control tab. In here, you can mess with the properties of a clip to apply visual effects to your footage. All clips have basic properties. You've got position, anchor point, scale, rotation, and opacity. These basic properties can be used to add very simple effects to your videos, and all you have to do is click on the blue text to change the effect. You can click and drag to move it, or you can type in a custom value. A simple visual effect that I use pretty often in my wildlife videos is simply resizing 4K footage to fit a 1080p frame. 4K clips are twice the size of 1080 clips, so all I have to do is change the scale to 50 and our clip fits. Visual effects don't have to be static either. Next to every effect property, there's a little stopwatch icon. If you click that, it'll create what's known as a keyframe. A keyframe is basically a little piece of data that stores all of the information of that property at that point in time inside Premiere, and this gives us the ability to animate. So let's mess with a bunch of different properties and add keyframes so that we can create a little bit of an animation inside our timeline. So let's mess with our scale, position, and rotation and see what kind of effect we can create. All you have to do is store one keyframe of value, then move your playhead to add a new keyframe with new values. What Premiere will do is it'll interpolate the data between those two keyframes and create a fluid animation. You can actually click and drag keyframes within a clip to change the speed or duration of an effect. So as you can see, we add a new keyframe and our clip is now animated.
Here's kind of how to approach thinking about effects in Premiere Pro. Pretty much all you're doing is you're just messing with the internal properties of a given piece of footage and telling Premiere how you want those properties to be changed. And to demonstrate this, we're gonna hop into our very own test project. Remember, the easiest way to learn this stuff is to actually do it. So let's hop into Premiere and get it done.
To demonstrate how you can use effects in Premiere, let's make a very simple title reveal, and we'll have the Premiere logo animate in over a blurred background and have some text appear like made in Premiere Pro. This is a pretty simple animation, but it looks nice and sleek, and I think it'll give you a good foundation into using effects in your editing workflow. What you're gonna need is a Premiere logo, and then you'll need some kind of stock footage for the background. I just shot this video of my pond in my backyard. I wouldn't put too much pressure into what kind of clip you use for this. Just have a pretty basic background clip that you can animate the logo and text over. First things first, let's drag our background footage into our timeline. Now, let's add our Premiere logo. At the start, this is a little too big, so we're gonna go ahead and go into our Effect Control tab, and let's click and drag on the property for scale to sort of shrink it down until it fits nicely in our frame. That looks pretty good. Let's leave it there. And now let's start thinking about our animation. We want this logo to come in from the bottom and end somewhere near the top. So let's go ahead and drag it down further. That looks good about there, and we'll add a keyframe to start that animation. Now we'll drag our playhead forward in time. It doesn't really need to be precise. We can actually adjust these keyframes later. And let's drag the Premiere logo further up, and that looks good about there. All right, that looks way too slow, so let's kind of compress these keyframes together. All right, let's put our keyframes there for now. It's probably still a little too slow, but I want to show you something different here. In our previous example, I showed you how to simply add keyframes. Well, sometimes animations require more than just simple keyframes. What I mean by that is, when the keyframes look like this, like diamonds, Premiere is going to basically create a linear change in that value between those two keyframes. This is fine for really simple animations, but for something that is going to be more sleek and professional and fluid, we want a little bit more of a dynamic change. Premiere actually gives us the ability to do this super easy without animating frame by frame by using temporal interpolation. All you have to do is right-click on your keyframe to pull up this drop-down menu. Then under temporal interpolation, you can pick easy ease in or easy ease out. For this animation, we want it to ease in when the animation starts and then ease out when the animation ends. This will create a bit more of a fluid motion and it'll look a lot more professional. So let's do that. Let's compress these keyframes one last time, run it back, All right, that looks good. Now what we need to do is change the opacity. The stopwatch for the property of opacity is already blue, which means if we change the value, it'll go ahead and add a keyframe. Now, to add a keyframe at the existing value, all you have to do is click the little diamond-shaped button to add a keyframe. Then drag the opacity of 100 to match the end of our movement animation. Keyframes can actually snap to each other in the same effects tab, which makes it super easy to sync up certain animations. Let's drag our playhead back to the beginning, set our opacity to 0, and then let's easy ease our keyframes to make the animation look all the more fluid. Let's also move our Premiere logo a little bit further in time. This will give our animation some time to sort of build up to the main thing, and then we can actually have it taper back out to sort of create a nice smooth arc for our title reveal. Now what we can do is we can add our text, and you can change the font inside your Effect Controls tab. I'm using League Gothic, you can use whatever font you want. And let's type out Made in Premiere Pro. We want this text to sort of fly in from off screen and then fly back off the screen when it leaves. And we want this to sync up with the animation of our Premiere logo. So to do that, we're gonna have to make sure we can line our playhead up with the keyframes in the Premiere logo, and then add animation keyframes to the text. The way you can most easily do this is actually go into your Premiere logo layer. Then, next to that little button by the keyframe, you can see these little arrows. Clicking those arrows allows you to toggle between existing keyframes. And then we can scoot our text layer back to line up with our Premiere logo, and then add a keyframe to save the final position of the entrance animation for our text. Now let's go back in time, beginning of the text clip, and drag the text to the left off the screen. That looks decent, but this animation could be better. Let's go ahead and have the text ease into the animation, but to keep the text moving pretty quickly towards the end, let's leave the end keyframe as a linear keyframe. You can actually mix and match these keyframe styles to get a bunch of different varieties of animation effects. To complete the entrance animation for our little title reveal, we want to start blurring the background. So we're gonna have to drag in another effect. Let's go ahead into our effects tab and type in blur, and you'll see a bunch of options pop up. I'm gonna use the Gaussian blur because that'll create the nice blurry matte effect that'll give us the look we want. You'll see, just like any other property of this clip, the Gaussian blur has different properties that we can mess with: the blurriness, the blur dimensions, and whether or not we want it to repeat the edge pixels. As you can see, when we drag the value for blurriness, the clip gets blurrier and blurrier. However, you'll see there's a little bit of vignetting around the edges where the clip is getting blurred against a black background. To fix this, simply check repeat edge pixels and the whole vignetting thing will go away. Now we want the animation for the blurriness to start when the Premiere logo appears. All we have to do is find the start of our Premiere clip, add a keyframe where the blurriness is 0, then use the arrows to toggle between keyframes and find the end animation of our Premiere logo. And then let's set our blurriness to something like 75 or 76. That looks pretty good. Nice blurry background, and gives it that nice, sleek, professional feel. We can play our animation back, and sure enough, it looks really cool. The background blurs as our assets animate onto the screen. As we're playing the animation back, you'll notice the text looks a little weird when it moves in. We're gonna add a fake motion blur to our text to kind of complete the organic feel of our animation. What we need to do is drag in a directional blur effect. So first things first, let's set the direction of the blur to 90 to make sure that it's actually horizontal. Otherwise, it's gonna look weird. So let's go in between our two keyframes. Doesn't need to be perfect, but try to aim for about the middle. Let's change the blur length to about 12 here and add a keyframe to it. Now what we need to do is make it so that the blur is 0 at both the beginning of the animation and the end of the animation. Let's play this back. Looks pretty good, a lot more convincing than it was before. Now all we have to do is actually animate the end animation to complete our title reveal arc. What we want to do here is pull our playhead a little bit forward in time to kind of give our title some breathing room before it animates off. This is pretty arbitrary, so just kind of go off of what looks good to you. Let's start with the text. Add a keyframe here using that diamond button to duplicate the end keyframe of our entrance animation. Then let's go forward a few frames and drag the text all the way off the screen to the right. Once again, let's repeat the motion blur, same way we did before. In between the two keyframes needs to be the largest blur, and then at the two edges, let's reset the value back to 0. This gives us our text exit animation. Now let's animate the exit animation for our logo. Using the text keyframes as a guide, just like before, let's add a keyframe for scale here. Then let's scale it way up so it fills the whole screen here, and then reanimate the opacity, make sure to easy ease, and let's take a look at this. Yes, that looks pretty good. The last thing we need is our background to fade out. So all we have to do is let's give it a little bit of breathing room after our title and text have gone away. And all we have to do is animate the opacity down to 0. And sure enough, we have our completed title reveal animation, and it looks pretty good if I don't say so myself.
And that's pretty much how you use visual effects inside Premiere Pro. If you found this video useful, make sure to leave a like down below, helps me out a ton for the YouTube algorithm. And let me know in the comments, what kind of effects do you plan on using in your videos? That's all for today. Hope you found this video useful, and I'll see you in the next one.